Yo, what's up, everybody? Chris here from Big Sports News, back at it again with another video. Today, I'm going to be bringing you guys the second part of my coverage of the first day of the CDL 2023 season, where we will, of course, see my home team, Atlanta Faze, taking on the Boston Breach in our opening matchup. Now, if you guys didn't watch the video before this, I, of course, went over my way too early power rankings and made a very quick tier list to give you guys an idea of how the teams are performing in scrimmages leading up to our first week of CDL matches. And now in part two, I'm going to give you guys my thoughts heading into, of course, our first couple days of CDL action. As you guys can see, this is the tier list that I made in the previous video. If you want to go back and watch my explanation as to why all the teams wound up here and what I'm thinking in terms of the form of the teams, I know Vegas Legion is a big shocker. Go back to that video and check it out, see what's going on. And don't forget to, of course, like, comment, and subscribe on that video. Do the same on this video. Help to get us out there in the algorithm, trying to really grow the channel this year and bring you guys better content. So without further ado, let's get into the schedule for today, tomorrow, and of course Sunday. I'm going through all 3 days just in one sitting, save time. Of course, we kick things off the Boston Breach taking on the Atlanta Faze, and as it stands, both teams are somewhat on even footing in terms of their hardpoint scrimmage performances. Faze has a 55% win percentage, Breach has a 42% win percentage. As it stands, I think Faze is a more composed team, and they're both really good control teams. We're talking about 78% versus, I believe, 67-ish, somewhere in there. Breach has been a really strong, no, they're 69% control team, Breach. So very close in terms of their control performances. Breach has been really strong in control and scrimmages, as is Faze. So I think it's going to come down to the control in the series. I do see the S&Ds being very even between the two, but I think Faze has a slight edge, just given what Slasher brings to S&D. I think he'll really transform this team into a really strong and methodical S&D team. So be on the lookout for that this season. So with that being said, I think Faze win this opening matchup. I'm not sure what the scoreline will be. We don't have any data, so we'll see how it goes. But in terms of the vibes I'm getting a Faze W in the vibes. In our second matchup of the day, we have Optic taking on the Minnesota Rokkr. And personally, I think Rokkr walked away with this one. Rokkr has been lighting it up in scrims. They've been looking like a top 3 team in scrims the entirety of the scrim season. In Texas, they've looked okay. They've had their days where they look really good. They've had their days where they look pretty solid, but they've never looked bad. So with that being said, Optic Texas definitely has a very strong fighting chance. But I do favor Minnesota Rokkr here, just given how their scrims have gone. And of course, just the roster improvement that they may bring in Cammy, Bant, and Afro to complement Attach. I think this is going to be a really strong team all year long. Looking at our next matchup, we have the Las Vegas Legion taking on the LA Thieves. This is going to be really interesting because in my power rankings, I have the Thieves as number 2, just given their control schedule, their control performances in scrims. And then I have the Vegas Legion as a number 4 team overall. They have so many reps in hardpoint. It's just hard to deny them a top 4 placing. They've been really playing hard, practicing, and beating good teams. So with that in mind, I think the Thieves walk away with this one, but I think it'll be close, and I do see the obvious upset potential for Vegas Legion. I think they'll want to come out first match of the season, make a statement, but I do think that the champs, they have looked really good in scrimmages, and it's hard to take away from just how good this core 4 of Draza, Kenny, of course, Envoy, and Octane are. They just won champs. So with that being said, I think Thieves likely win this, but I do think that Vegas has a very strong chance to win this. I say 45% chance for Vegas, 55% chance for Thieves. Looking at our next matchup, our last matchup of the day, we have the LA Guerillas taking on the Seattle Surge. And as you guys know, this is, in my mind, 12 versus 10. I think the Guerillas are the last place team in the CDL. Possibly. London and Guerillas have just been having really bad performances across the board. So we'll see if maybe during the season they have a stronger performance against the Seattle Surge, who have also been struggling a little bit in scrims. But scrims obviously don't mean anything going into the real matches. They just give you kind of an idea of how teams are performing on certain matchups and in certain game types. So with that being said, I think the Seattle Surge likely take this series just because it seems based on the scrim results that there is something going on in the LAG camp where they're just not clicking how they need to yet. So with that in mind, I think Seattle Surge walk away with the W here. Now, looking ahead to our matches on Saturday, we of course have the battle for the North with two new teams, right? Of course, on the Ultra, they picked up two players. They picked up Sandy, and of course, they brought up Scrappy from Ultra Academy North America. And on the Rokkr, of course, like I said, they have Bance, Cammy coming from Ultra last season, and Afro coming from the London Royal Ravens to complement Attach, who was already there. So with that in mind, I think this is going to be a really, 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 really exciting series, possibly series of the weekend. But I do see the Minnesota Rokkr walking away with this one. I think they are the better team on paper, but the Ultra have a really strong chance of winning this as well. I say 60% Minnesota, 40% Ultra in terms of the likelihood of win. In our next matchup, we have the New York Subliners taking on the London Royal Ravens. The Ravens have not been looking good in scrims, but maybe they'll turn it around here. Subliners have been looking pretty solid in scrims. They just don't have a lot of reps yet. They have about 12 reps total. So we'll see how it goes for them. But as it stands, I do expect the Subliners to walk away with this one. I just think that their new roster of course, Priesta, Skies, Kismet, and Hydra will be too much for this London Royal Ravens team of Paul X, Nasty, Zero, and of course, Asim. I think Subliners win this. Not sure how it gets done, but I think it's going to be a pretty decent series, and we'll definitely get an idea of how London is looking this season based on their performance this series. In our next matchup, we have the Seattle Surge taking on the Boston Breach. And I think with the Boston Breach, their new look team of course, Awakening, Vivid, Nero, and Methods. The only player being changed here is obviously bringing in Awakening for TJ Haley, who went to the Vegas Legion. I think that the Boston Breach walk away with this one. They've been looking really good in scrims, like I said before. And in my mind, they're a top 5 team as it stands based on scrim results. So I see them taking the dub against Seattle Surge. And I think it's probably going to be a pretty comfortable win for Boston. But like I said, Surge, they were a great team last year. It hasn't translated necessarily to consistency yet in scrimmages, but it could translate to consistency in the season. Maybe they found some things in practice that work for them, and they'll be working a really well-oiled out game plan. In our next matchup, we of course have the Florida Mutineers taking on the Vegas Legion, and I didn't go over who the roster for the Legion is, but of course this season it's Clayster, Temp, TJ Haley, and Prolute. And then on the Mutineers, it's Major Maniac, Vikel, Brack, and who's their fourth? It'll come back to me. But anyways, I do expect the Legion to walk away with this series victory here over the Mutineers. I think the Mutineers are a very solid team, and I believe they did beat Vegas in scrims recently, but I think that the Legion are a stronger team, and I think they'll walk away with the W here. Which brings us to our Sunday matches. So starting things off, we of course have, in my mind, number 12, the LA Guerillas taking on number 11, the London Royal Ravens. And personally, I don't know what to expect here. I have no idea what form either team will be in. But just given the strength of the rosters, Paul X, Asim, Zero, and Nasty versus Hook, Spart, Neptune, and Alec Arsenes. Coin flip. We'll go with LAG. Screw it. I love Arsenes, and I hope he wins this. So we'll go with LAG. I think, I don't know. This is 100% a 50-50 series. We don't know what we're getting from either team going into this weekend. In our next matchup, we of course have Optic Texas taking on their boogeyman, the Florida Mutineers. This is going to be an interesting one. I think Optic. I'm joking. I think with the current form of both teams, I think Optic wins this pretty convincingly. And then in our next matchup, oh my God, we got the match, the champs rematch. We have LA Thieves taking on Atlanta Faze. This is going to be an interesting one. This is going to be really interesting. This is a grudge match. Obviously, Simp and Draza are on smoke. Slasher got dropped from LA Thieves in Cold War, so there's that as well. It's going to be an interesting one. I think FaZe walk away with it. Not sure how it gets done. I think it's going to be really scrappy, but I think FaZe win. And then in our last matchup of the weekend, we of course have the Toronto Ultra taking on the New York Subliners. This one's going to be really interesting. We of course have Scrappy going up against Hydra. That's going to be an interesting matchup, even though they don't play the same position. I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup. Skies and of course Insight squaring up probably as the two ARs. I know Insight's definitely the main AR. And then we of course have Clean X squaring up against Kismet, likely. unless Hydra and Kleenex kind of butt heads in the way the map goes. But I digress. It's going to be a really interesting matchup. We have a lot of young talent on both teams. And I'm really curious to see how Standy leaves his mark on the game. He had a really rough Vanguard season, so I think he'll rebound this year in Modern Warfare 2. And I'm also very curious to see how that Standy Scrappy duo works on the map. I think it's going to be absolutely crazy. Both are such passionate young players and both are so gifted. It's going to be interesting watching that series to see how both perform. And on the New York Subliner side, I'm really curious to see how Priesta and of course Skies as an AR duo kind of mesh, as well as their sub duo, of course, Kismet and Hydra. They had a lot of chemistry last season, but I want to see how the four of them play together because Skies and Priest are the new men coming into the squad. And of course, on the Toronto Ultra side, we have Kleenex and Insight, a team of two who brought in, of course, Sandy and Scrappy. So I'm curious to see how these two teams perform. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We have a team of two with AR and sub, and then we have a team of two with two subs. So I'm curious to see how this matchup goes. Really, the team that I'm watching the most this weekend, if I had to put something on the bulletin board, I'll give you guys 5 teams to watch this weekend, and for different reasons, right? Vegas Legion, obviously number 1 team to watch. They have something to prove. We are curious to see if they are back to where they were in Modern Warfare, where they were a top 6 team. Of course, Kismet was on that team. The other team that I think has something to really prove to everybody is the London Royal Ravens. Paul X and, of course, Asim were both players who kind of got a rough go last season. Paul X, of course, being shifted around from London to the New York Subliners, and then Asim having a rough season. Both players are looking to prove something, so definitely keep an eye on the London Royal Ravens. And then on the other side, I think the Florida Mutineers are another team to watch just because their roster is really interesting. And then Vikel, I want to see how he does in the NA pro scene as opposed to challengers. Want to see Brack back in the league. Haven't seen him play since Modern Warfare on Toronto Ultra. Really curious to see how that goes. And then the other 2 teams I want to watch, of course, Toronto Ultra with Scrappy and Standy. I just want to see Scrappy in the league. I want to see him get an interview. And then the New York Subliners, of course, Priesta and Skies. I'm really curious to see how that performs for the Subliners, how that duo performs. Yeah, so that's going to wrap it up for you guys. If you want a quick recap, I'm thinking Faze, Rokkr, Thieves, Surge, Rokkr, Subliners, Breach, Legion, Guerillas, Texas, Faze, and then for the last matchup, I'm thinking Ultra. So yeah, guys, that's about wrap it up for me. I know this was not as short and sweet as I wanted it to be, but it's a little bit shorter than it would have been normally in the past. Trying to break the content up, trying to make it more engaging, more exciting, and more fun for you guys. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you watched the last one. If you need more context, be sure to go back and watch that. I break everything down a little bit more in depth as opposed to just going over vibes and things in terms of how I expect these series to go. So yeah, if you guys missed out on that, be sure to go watch it. And if you haven't already, like I said before, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And yeah, be on the lookout for more content coming soon. Of course, I am going to try to get more content out more frequently, so the videos are going to be shorter, but more frequent, I hope. And yeah, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Hope you enjoy all the COD this weekend. Hope you guys have a great morning, noon, or night, wherever you may be on this beautiful planet, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Once again, this is Chris with Fake Sports News, and I'm signing out. Peace.